No one can force someone to be curious, nor force him or her to be self-aware. And yet that's the bedrock on which we build everything else on. Curiosity is a key thing, not just for us at Nestle, but for me personally. I could share very broadly with you with regards to curiosity being our North Star, and I can share about it being in my life as well. And this links very lovely. In a very lovely way to what you mentioned about self-awareness. We talked about being curious about myself. What are my strengths and where are my areas of gaps, but not just that. What are my motivations? What's important to me? What are my values? What makes me tick? What drives me? And I think if we are curious about ourselves and we afford ourselves that search to say, okay, what really makes me tick, what really gives me satisfaction, then we end up being more fulfilled people, more engaged employees, more effective leaders, and just a more purposeful business leader. And you can't have the latter without the former. And we talked about that because we talk about curiosity about self as a way of not just searching deep within and going into meditation, even though that might be the case for some people, but just being very clear about who am I? How do I show up? And what's important to me? And how do I continue to give back? Because otherwise, the danger is that we could be climbing a ladder and in a few years' time realize that it's leaning against the wrong wall. So that's very much my ethos with regards to curiosity and self-awareness. In Nestle, we talk about being curious about your team, being curious about others, because then it's seeing the strengths and the diversities of everyone around the table and valuing that, leveraging that, acknowledging that, and celebrating that, instead of saying that everyone needs to be cookie cutter. So that's very important for me as well as someone who heads integrated leadership development. We talk about psychological safety and bringing the best out from your team so that we can be better than the sum of our parts. And that's being curious about others, about what they bring to the table and creating space, advocating for them, being an ally for the ones who are different from you. Two, being curious about the organization and understand that we all exist within an organization and having that empathy as well, sometimes for the organization, knowing what's important to the business. In HR, we talk a lot about individuals and teams, and that's not wrong. That's great. But we need to understand the context in which these operate so that we could build these up for the organization to succeed. It's not one without the other. And it's about making that alignment happen, helping people connect with that so that they could see what's the grand vision, what's the big, hairy, audacious goal, and then find their parts to contribute towards it. And very importantly, the final bit is this to be curious about the ecosystem. And that means beyond our organization, it's about other organizations, other people, our communities, countries that we operate in, the environment, and knowing that we don't live in a vacuum. Being curious with what makes it tick, what is required, so that we can then be an answer to part of the circular economy, to part of the grander ecosystem. And then it goes back to self awareness, being curious about self again and realigning and saying, how do I then now adjust myself with this double loop learning so that I can learn more about myself in this whole virtuous cycle? So that's my philosophy for curiosity as well.